no girl has ever slept with a guy because he was in state, right? However, girls have slept with lots of guys while they're in state, right? Because of the things that are kind of the outgrowths of them, or the things that the behaviors he exhibits under those conditions, that kind of stuff, right? And so state's pretty interesting, and a good place to look for the understanding of state is actually things like sports psychology, right? How many people in this room played sports at some point in your life? A little bit? Okay, cool. How many of you guys ever had a good game where you played well? How many of you guys ever had a bad game where you played badly? Did you ever have a bad game at a later point in your life when you were a better player than you had when you had a good game when you weren't as good, and then you had a bad game when you were better? Did that ever happen? Yeah. Right? Okay. Now, that said, as you got better, did you have more good games on average? Right? At least maybe you upped you're against better competition, so you know what I mean, right? You had a game that against the lower competition would have devastated them. Does that make sense? Okay. So the idea here is, yes, there's this performance, this like bring it on game day type of performance that exists, but there's also a thing called skill, right? There's a thing called fitness. There's all these underpinning skills that are in game. And so you take me, I was a soccer player, or for a football player for Europeans and stuff like that, right? When I had my absolute best game ever, if you were to compare that to Cristiano Ronaldo's worst game that he's had in the last 10 years, who do you think played better, him or me? Him, right? But I was in state. I was on, right? There's a difference though. There's such a chasm, there's such a gap in skill that all the state in the world won't make up for it. Or for example, if you guys are out tonight and you're in state, and I'm in the club too, if we're taking bets on who's gonna pull that night, where are you putting your money, right? If everyone wants to put money on yourself, feel free, right? But the point is, like, there's the skill gap, right? There's the fact that I know what I'm doing, right? And what kind of coaches were talking about when they were up here dealing with state and whatnot is that if you're in state, right, you can get the girl attracted, you can do some things like you said, being witty, those kind of things. Well, you do open up those channels of your brain a bit more. But if you have that, but you don't know how to use that to build attraction, it's not really useful to you. If you don't know, once a girl likes you, how to go about structuring the pull in a way that will make her feel not slutty about it, not useful to you. If you don't know how to structure getting the friends to be okay with you being in isolation with her, all those things are not really useful to you in terms of getting an actual result, okay? So things like state or positive mental attitude, they don't help you do anything, but they do help you do everything that you can already do a bit better, right? So is it useful? Is state useful? Absolutely. But is it a be-all, end-all? No. And can you do well without it? Yes, if you have the appropriate skills and the appropriate understandings. These things that are happening organically in field, they can be broken down. They can be broken down to a process, right? So what is attractive male behavior? Women are cueing on a few little things, right? Women are cueing on, can you hold eye contact? Women are cueing on, like, is your vocal tonality good and resonant and confident, right? Women are cueing on, are you persistent in the right ways and not the wrong ways? Women are cueing on when they say something to you, do you react to them, or are you, like, you know, able to remain chill and calm, right? And all of these things are either skills or can be learned as habits, right? And so the idea is, rather than needing state to get you there, why not practice the skill so that you have it when you're in state or out of state? And also that even when you are in state, it's even a better version of state, right? So what you're doing really is if this is like when you're a state-based guy, right? This is like your absolute best and this is like your worst. And there's a huge gap between the two and you're rarely at your best, right? The idea of learning technique is you bring this baseline up so that your worst is almost at what your best was before. And as a consequence of that, the skills you've learned also take your best up here, right? So the phenomenon of being in state will always kind of exist, right? I get in state and I do better than I do out of state. But that said, I'm still odds on to pull a hot girl out of state, right? If you're betting on me to go out on a night out of state, you'd put money on me pulling someone, right? Because my baseline has gotten, like, maybe I was in state was here first. Now my baseline out of state is up here because of practice, because of technique, that kind of stuff, okay? So that's how we're going to work on things. Is we're going to work on, like, what is the actual, not what is the thing inside you that's happening, but what is the girl experiencing? That's where it all starts. Because fundamentally, to get a girl attracted to you, it's what is the experience she's having with you? What is the actual behavior exhibiting? And then let's learn to have that be a habit. Let's learn to have that be instinctive. So that's like not even something you have to try to do. It's something you do by accident, right? And so you're always attractive. right? And that's where we're going to try and get. And then beyond that, we can talk about how to get into even better states once you have those techniques, right? And the funny thing about that is, do you guys know what involuntary bodily functions are? Like voluntary versus involuntary functions, right? So if I don't blink my eyes, that's voluntary. I can blink when I want to. It's also involuntary a little bit, right? In the sense that I'll blink if I'm not thinking about it, but it's pretty voluntary. I can control it. Waving my hand, completely voluntary. I don't think I've ever waved my hand by accident, okay? There are other things that are very involuntary. The heart beating, very, very involuntary, right? It's hard to directly control it, right? But notice I said directly, right? If you wanted to control your heartbeat, could you? Yeah, you can. Do some jumping jacks. Like jump up and down and run around, you just sped your heart up. If you want to slow your heart down, lie down, take some deep breaths, relax, go to sleep, just slow your heart down. So you can control involuntary functions as well, but trying to control them directly doesn't really work. If you try and make your heart beat faster by thinking about your heart, that's kind of a fool's errand, right? It's a very, very hard way to go about it, okay? But there are processes and procedures that will get you there, right? So I want you guys to think of state as an involuntary function, okay? It's not something you can control directly, but it is something you can control, right? And you can control it through actions, right? There's an experiment, at least, I mean, I didn't participate in this experiment, I don't know. I heard about an experiment where they actually got people to control their heartbeats in a voluntary way. And here's how they did it. What they did is they hooked the heart up to a monitor, and instead of trying to change the heartbeat, you actually try and change the monitor, right? So you focus on trying to change the monitor spikes, and over time and with practice, you can actually learn to like move the monitor. Does that make sense? And it's a pretty interesting way, but you're indirectly controlling your heartbeat without having to change your other physiology, right? So that's sort of like the equivalent of like getting in state by thinking about it. But again, there's this intermediate step, right? Doing it directly doesn't really work. And especially for state as an involuntary function, trying to do it directly doesn't work. And here's why. Because what state essentially is a state where you're not self-conscious, right? It's a lack of self-consciousness. So if you're trying to think about inside your head how to be unself-conscious, that's the most self-conscious process you could possibly have, right? So thinking about state and thinking about getting out of your head by necessity puts you in your head. It's like if you tried to speed up your heart by laying down to go to sleep, right? It's the exact wrong process for how to go about it. And that's what happens to guys that they become state-based. Like, oh, how do I get in state? Oh, I'm not in state. And it just puts them more and more and more out of state, more and more in their head. And they start exhibiting more and more of the bad, unattractive behaviors that come from being out of state, okay? So the real secret you're looking for is what is the equivalent of doing jumping jacks for your heart for getting in state, right? Or like looking at that monitor for your heart to get in state. And there are a lot of different answers, and there are a lot of different answers for a lot of different people, right? But there are various things that can work, right? One thing that can work is to go and do something scary, right? Just go do a scary approach. You'll be scared. It'll suck a little bit, right? To me, actually, I think it's exciting. I don't even think it sucks. I think it's just exciting, not scary. But regardless, it may be scary for you, right? But when you go do that like ballsy approach, one of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's going to go well, which is a feedback mechanism that tends to put you in state. So that's a good thing. Or it's going to go badly. And if it goes badly, but nobody arrests you, and nobody gets in a fight with you, and nobody yells and screams at you, you've just given your body and yourself and your mind evidence that it's a safe environment. Does that make sense? Right? Because a lot of times the reason why you're scared, I mean, different people are scared for different reasons. And by the way, certain things will work for certain people, certain things won't work. I'm not going to say every one of these works for everybody, but I will say I have yet to find the person for whom none of them work. Okay? Does that make sense? But for a lot of people, and I think for most people, if you go do something really ballsy and nothing bad happens to you as a result, you do convince yourself that it's a bit of a safer environment. You do convince yourself that you have either some status in that environment, whatever, so you can be a little less scared to do it again, right? So doing that ballsy thing can definitely get you in state. Another thing that can work for getting into state or moving in a positive direction, again, if you're doing these things to get into state, they won't work, by the way, right? If you're like, I will do this physical activity to get in state, now you're still in your head and you're still trying to chase state. You have to truly do it for its own purpose. You have to truly do it for its own sake because it's the right thing to do, because it's fun for you, because it's the process, not because to get yourself in state. Because as soon as it's coming back to that, you're still in your head and you're still going to fuck it up. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Other things you can do is change your physiology, right? So that's the literal equivalent to doing jumping jacks to get your heart rate up, right? So funny one, here's an exercise you guys can try. I've done this with students, it works. Go in the bathroom, get in front of a mirror, and for a minute straight, or 2 minutes if you're, an overachiever, you have to smile, smirk, or wink. That's all you can do. Smile, smirk, or wink. Funny thing happens. When you're in state and happy and whatnot, you smile. When you smile, you get happier. When you wink, you get like a little cockier, right? When you smirk, you get that feeling. Everybody smile real fast, just like even as a fake smile, like smile a little bit and then smirk. Wink, right? It changes the physiology just a little bit. And you guys just did that for like a second or two, right? For a minute, that's all you're able to do is smile, smirk, wink, right? It's just a little bit of a state exercise. For other guys, going on the dance floor and just dancing very loosely, very crazy, will do the physiology of getting them in state. Other guys yelling at the top of their lungs will do it in terms of those kind of things, right? The funny thing though is if you do it specifically to get in state, what you're going to do right afterwards is you're going to monitor, did it get me in state? And then you're right back in your head. So you truly have to do it for the right purpose, okay? So these are an array, an example of some of the methods. My particular method that I like the best is to basically do the game for its own sake, right? Do the game for the beauty of the game, regardless of if you're in state or not, right? So for me, the biggest success I can have in a night out is the success of having played the game to the best of my ability, right? And that's my goal for every night. My goal for the night isn't to pull, right? I mean, obviously I like pulling, I like sex, that kind of stuff, right? But my goal is to play the game as perfectly and as well as I know how to. And so that means if I'm in state, I play as best I can in state, and I'm very happy with that. If I'm out of state, I play the best I can out of state, and I'm very happy about that. And if I go through the whole night and I play the best I can out of state and I never get in state, I'm completely fine with that, right? Because I know I did my best and I'm happy and I'm proud about that. And if I play that way and I happen to get in state at some point throughout the night, which will happen a large percentage of the time, I'm very happy with that as well. But what's happening is I'm so focused on the process itself and the next right action and the thing I'm doing, and that's a focus that's external to myself. That's a focus that's outside of my head. And I'm using so much mental energy and so much bandwidth outside of my head that it's actually literally impossible for me to focus inside my head because there's no mental RAM left for that.
I guess it's kind of two things. It's one, that I'm sort of battling with the feeling of being inauthentic in those situations. And the other one is that when I'm just trying to push buttons and follow the process, I tend to over-focus on that one and then be even less loose and enjoy things even less. And then why would I even want to do it? It feels like a drill.
Right. So now you're saying basically if I'm not focused on my own internal thing, then I'm focused on getting a reaction or getting a result from the girl, right? And that's a different focus, right? So did I say I'm focused on pulling or getting the girl to like me? I said, no, I'm focused on playing the game the right way, right? So I'm not focused on making her like me. I'm focused on doing all the things that should make her like me. And if she likes me, great. If she doesn't like me, great. I'll live with it. Does that make sense? Do you get that? Do you get that difference in focus, though?
Yeah, but how do you enjoy your night out then?
How do I enjoy my night? Because I know that I played well. I know that I played well. Have you ever, like, playing sports, have you ever played well and still lost? And you can still go home and live with yourself because you played your best game?
I tried to murder the entire team for fucking it up.
Fair enough, as well, because that's your passion, but at least you can kind of live with yourself. Whereas other times, if you say you played badly and lost, now it feels much worse, right, than if you played well and lost, right? It's less heartbreaking, but it's better for your, like, self-esteem. Does that make sense? Right, and so for me, that's the thing, is it's the self-esteem factor of knowing that I did it well and did my best is what I'm really going for, right? And that's what pleases me. That's the satisfaction I get from game, is the well-played game. And the good thing is the well-played game will lead to results, right? I'll give you guys kind of a metaphor from poker. I was a poker player, right? Does anybody here? Sometimes I do get, you have a couple poker players? Few? So the thing in poker is this: you can play a poker hand completely perfectly and lose a shit ton of money, right? You get all the money in right, you completely read the guy's hands, you play perfectly, wrong card comes on the river, wrong card comes at the end, whatever. And massive pot, right? But you know that you played the hand well. And to be a professional poker player, which I was for several years, you have to be happy with that outcome, right? Like annoyed by that outcome, but happy with that outcome. You have to know that if you do that outcome over and over and over again, you're going to be very, very rich, right? And there are other times when you'll misplay a hand. You'll get outplayed and you'll get lucky with the last card, and you're scooping the chips, but at the same time, you should feel pretty sheepish. You should probably like, I really fucked up, like I don't deserve, whatever, and that should feel bad to you. So how you feel about the hand should not be dependent on whether you're scooping chips or not. It should be dependent on whether you should be scooping chips or not. So your job is to play the game that should get a result and do that consistently over and over again, because if you do that, you're going to get all the things you want in life, right? If you're consistently not doing that, you're not. So for me, I gain self-esteem and pleasure and all these things from the game every single time I do the right move. Whether it works out or not, every single time and it's not even like that it has to be the right move. Every time I do the best move I know at that time, right? That's my goal. To me, game's almost like a meditation of doing the right thing, right? It's almost, I don't want to get all spiritual, but it's like almost a self-actualization process, right? It's this process of like doing the right thing regardless of how you feel, doing the right thing regardless of whether it's easy or hard, just doing that thing. And to me, when I've done that thing over and over and over again, that's when I gain pleasure from game, right? And also, like my dream night is this. This is gonna sound really weird and perverse. My dream night is this. I go out and I do every single thing I know right and do the absolute best game I can, and it somehow doesn't work, right? Like it somehow doesn't work in some way that's unpredictable to me. Because when that happens, that means I've discovered something new. And that's the most exciting thing, right? I've discovered a new phenomenon in game, or I've discovered that there's something else out there I don't know, and then I'm excited to develop it even further, right? Because most of the time when I game really, really well, I get a result, right? Or maybe there's some external factors that whatever, but like if I game really well and it's not working, that's when I learn, right? But situations like I go to a new city and it's a different culture, a new country, it's a different culture, and everything I know that's working, I'm on top of my game and it doesn't work, right? Now I get fascinated. And now I spend the next few days figuring out how to game that country. And I learn some lessons, and once I've learned those lessons, now my game's gone to a whole new level. And that's exciting for me. Does that make sense? Right? So yeah, so I'm truly doing it for its own sake. I'm doing it for the sake of the relationship with the girl, like having the best interaction I possibly can and the best game I possibly can. And again, because that becomes my focus, I can't be focused in my head. There's no headspace left for that. And then what happens is I actually get in state, right? And all these other good things come from it as well, right? But if I'm ever thinking about being in state, if I'm ever thinking about being out of state, that's when I am really, really bad, and that's when I'm really try hard and really needy. And when that happens, all I do is I say, what is the one best right move I can do from here? Whether it works or not, what is the first next right move I can make? And then once I've done that, I say, okay, what's the next right move and the next right move and the next right move? And I make enough right moves that either I get in state or I succeed because I've done a lot of right moves out of state. And that can work too.